All right, moving on to maybe the biggest game of the day, maybe the biggest SEC game of the season. We have number 1 Georgia, a 5.5-point favorite against number 8 Alabama. This game kicks off on at 4 p.m. Eastern on CBS. It has an over-under 54.5 and is played at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. We're all very familiar with that. That's where it's been for quite a while now. It's been the money's been on Georgia this week. They're up from 3.5 now. Keep in mind, this is one of very, very few games on the schedule where there's likely enough public action to actually move the line. The Super Bowl, late NFL playoff games, SEC championship, national championship. That's about it. Maybe Ohio State, Michigan, but that's really about it. And I know there's different schools of thought of no amount of public money can move the line, but I don't really subscribe to that theory. I do believe that enough public money can move the line. But
I'm not even a bettor, and I know that, Brett. Yes, that is absolutely true.
There are some people that are very adamant in that no amount of public. Either way. And the public bets favorites. That's who they're over. That's why there's so much value in taking underdogs with the points. But the public is going to be all over Georgia. I don't know if all the movement kind of has been that. I don't think it's been all that. But, I think Georgia is going to continue to get the nod. I don't think we're going to see a lot of Alabama movement. And if we do late in the week, I'm almost positive it's not going to be public money. It's going to be very sharp money that is probably going to be like a day of thing that's like, oh boy, we see it move. And of course, it was Alabama the whole way. Either way, especially in reaction when we're talking about the public, especially in reaction to last week's Iron Bowl. People tuned in and saw Alabama on the ropes against Auburn, but Alabama never plays well at Jordan-Hare. But what a ridiculous ending of that game. That was a lot of fun for somebody who had no stake in it whatsoever. So much fun to watch. But Alabama never plays well at Jordan-Hare. They just haven't. This is now 4 times. And the last 4 times, they've lost twice outright as favorites, and they have failed to cover the other 2 spreads by quite a lot. This week, I think it'll be really key to pay attention to any day of movement. Like I said, that's going to be the sharp stuff. The public stuff may move it throughout the week. These are 2 teams that are really hitting their stride right now, perhaps more than anybody else in the country, aside from maybe Oregon. These 2 teams are playing top of their games. This definitely is a bit in the weeds here, but I'm really interested to see Georgia's coverage adjustments against Jalen Milroe and Alabama, especially seeing that famed 4th and 31 that'll go down in history. Bama's wide receivers, they're not excellent yak guys. It's a lot of 20.6 ADOT, and that's their MO, and that's Jalen Milroe's MO. But Georgia's secondary, very sound tacklers through and through. They have some of the best tackling safeties, some of the best safeties, period, in the country. I'm looking for what's called rob, hole, steal coverages, whatever you call them or know them. It's where the corners bail in cover 2 and safeties are coming down. And, Bullard, Starks, they're better players to undercut verticals and maybe deep digs and anything like that. But if we're looking at soft coverages from the corners, they bail. You may see Milroe try to take one of these seam shots, and all of a sudden you've got 6 going the other way because the safeties are playing robber coverages there. I'm just interested to see if they do that. I think that's a very sound way to make Jalen Milroe second-guess himself, tuck the ball when he doesn't want to, challenge him to take those underneath routes, and force the receivers that are not great yak receivers to make DBs that are all very good tacklers miss. That is super in the weeds, but that is the matchup I'm looking for defensively with Georgia against Alabama's offense. Not so much in the weeds. The duality between these 2 quarterbacks is very funny and also a lot of fun. You're looking at Carson Beck, super quick release, very short average time to throw. He's methodical. He's got a shorter average depth of target. Milroe, he's basically just a Madden player. He dances around and launches everything deep. He's got a very long average time to throw, super fast, very good playmaker. These are the kind of matchups that don't normally catch my interest. They almost fall into the point of being too corporate when you're dealing with the SEC championship. It's my least favorite on the docket usually, but this year has absolutely piqued my interest.
Before I get to this one, Brett, I talked last week, and we both did, about our affinity for the Iron Bowl, how much we love it. 2013 was the kick 6. 2023 is the 4th and 31. You just mark your calendar right now, because 2033, something crazy is going to happen. I can't believe it, man. That ending, like you said, it quite literally is unbelievable. You had to be watching to fully appreciate what that moment was all about. It was just crazy. This Alabama team now needs to get back up again, because Georgia is going to be a massive threat and a big, big test here. You said this too corporate. Maybe not the matchup that usually catches your eye in a typical year. This year's a little bit different for the reasons that you mentioned. I'll say it, Brett, and maybe I'm plain vanilla, whatever you want to say, basic. I don't even know what the correct term is. Georgia, Alabama always catches my interest. These are the matchups. I mean, like Ohio State, Michigan last week, that I simply can't miss. And again, I'm excited for this game. It's going to be a regular season game in 2024. The SEC came out and said they're playing that game in September, which really smart on them, because you even hear about it on the selection show. Teams that lose. The selection committee was talking about Oregon's loss early in the year to Washington. Well, one, it wasn't early in the year. It was really mid-year, but early in the year, and he kind of just brushes over it like, oh, yeah, they lost, but it was early in the year. So by putting Alabama and Georgia in September next year, that's a, quote, early in the year loss that either team can easily recover from. Now, in a 12-team playoff, it probably doesn't matter when they play that game. They're both getting in most likely. But for this game, I'm very, very excited about it. It's going to be fantastic. Two giants of the conference, the two favorites coming into the year, clashing in Atlanta. In all likelihood, a trip to the CFP on the line. I do think there's a scenario where if Alabama wins, the SEC could be shut out. I know SEC fans don't want to hear that. I think there's a scenario. I'm not even advocating for it that my most deserving would suggest that should be the case. I'm saying that could be where we end up. Let's just wait and see. Usually, Brett, and I've talked about this already a couple times on this show, and I will on other games coming up, line movement is in the direction of my numbers. Not in this one. And it might be for the reason you talked about with the public moving this line a little bit. You said Georgia opened -3.5. It's moved to -5.5. My model actually makes this Georgia -2. It's a 56% win expectancy for the Bulldogs. Georgia is the better team. My numbers tell me that. My eyes tell me that. But I said the same thing. I'm not so far removed from the 2021 season that I don't remember saying the same thing exactly 2 years ago. And Alabama went into Mercedes-Benz and beat the Bulldogs. So this isn't some foregone conclusion, in my opinion, that Georgia's just going to roll over Alabama because that's what this team does. Actually, now that I think about it, was that the last time Georgia lost a game? I think it was, that SEC championship game to Alabama.
It was the last time they've lost.
It's literally been 2 years, but it's the exact same buildup, the exact same scenario. And so the best and most even matchup in this game should be the number 4 Georgia offense against the number 6 Alabama defense. I'm very excited to see how Carson Beck performs against the strongest defense that he's faced this season. The difference in the game for me is likely to be made on the other side, though, where the only unit in this game that doesn't rank in the top 6 nationally is the Alabama offense. They come in at number 15, but Milroe and company have improved significantly since being ranked number 29 early in the season. And when I say early in the season, I don't mean the middle of September or the middle of October. I do mean early in the season. I'm talking week 3, week 4. Can they score enough points, that Alabama offense, against the number 5 ranked Georgia defense? That is the big question. Georgia's undefeated, the 2-time defending national champs, haven't lost since the SEC championship game 2 years ago they just talked about. They don't lose often, clearly. But in the back of their minds, Brett, this is important for me. I feel like they have to know there is a scenario, and maybe it's not even that far-fetched, where a loss knocks them out of the CFP. It's the only time all year that they're playing with that kind of pressure on them. And I don't think they played with that kind of pressure on them last year either. I think going into the SEC championship game last year, I think they were in regardless just based on how everything else was shaping up. Like if 12-1 Georgia would have got in over 12-1 Ohio State, or 12-1 Georgia would have got in over 11-1 Ohio State last year, who the committee had number 4. So I'm curious how Georgia's going to respond. They're not used to this pressure. They lose any other game this season during the regular season, they still know, hey, we win the SEC, we're still good. That's not the case right now. You lose this game, your season could be over for all intents and purposes. So let's see. We haven't seen Georgia play like that in a long time, and I'm curious how it's going to play out. Bottom line, I've got Georgia -2. It's a 44% chance that the Tide potentially put the committee in a really tough spot on Sunday, Brett. I wouldn't want to be in that committee room if you've got undefeated Michigan, undefeated Washington, undefeated Florida State, 12-1 Texas, 12-1 Bama, and 11-1 or 12-1 Georgia as well. Who are you leaving out? I don't know. I don't want to be in that room.
I'm rooting for chaos. No matter how things shape out, unless all top 4 teams just win and roll, then that's what we're going to go with. Yep. But I am rooting for so much chaos. I want every team to be one loss. I just do. I want them to make a tough decision because it'd be fun. It'd be so great. Fun. But we're looking at under, just barely under the key number of 55. So I actually like over the point total here. The SEC championship game has been a higher scoring match in years past, and I think these are two offenses that can score. and that are playing their best football of the year currently, and defenses that aren't quite the historic levels maybe that we expected coming into the year. I also lean Alabama +6 or better. I agree with your numbers here. If it is indeed the public betting the favorite, then I'm going to take the underdog, especially at 6. I think there was a little bit of an overreaction to last week, and 6 kind of seems to be the resistance buy point because I have not seen it cross that. So Alabama +6, over 55 or over 54.5, 55 or better, I should say, are my two plays in this game.